All right, we're going to pick up where we left off here because my video ran a little short. Begin with the Aphrodite that we left off on in her modest pose and go forward to this wonderful statue of Apollo in his godlike stance, with his arm outstretched and his drape over his arm. So as you can see, this is definitely later in the period, much more sophisticated artwork here. This post that he has behind him with the snake coming around it would have been needed because this was actually a copy. This is a Roman copy done in marble of the original, would have been in bronze. You would not have needed that post or that trunk behind him in the bronze version because he would have stood up fine on his own. But as we are doing this in marble, you'll need this bit of a structural support here behind him. But you can see the sophistication in his hair, the arrows behind him, the drape of the fabric, just wonderful piece. And again, you can see it in this wonderful version of Artemis with her deer, her hind. This is another Roman model. The original would have been in bronze as well. You can see the beautiful drape of her fabric over her body. Not just the fabric itself, but showing the muscle and the structure underneath is so very, very well done. That's so difficult to do. And as she comes behind her, she pulls out her arrow gracefully, arching her arm behind her. Wonderful in form. And then we have the dying Gaul, 220 BC, and you can tell that he is not Greek because of his hair and a bit of his features on his face. Gaul was what at the time period would have been France, and so Caesar had gone and he had conquered Gaul and come back victorious. And so here you have this dying Gaul, this dying man from Northern Europe, or I would say Western Europe, as opposed to Greece. And it's a departure from what we've seen before because he's not a god. He's not a goddess, but he's just an ordinary soldier. We do have the discus thrower from earlier, the athlete, but here the soldier is heightened up to almost the status of a god or a goddess because he is immortalized here. And how is he presented? He is dying. But even in death, he is heroic. He is facing death with strength. All those things that were so important to the Greeks. All right, here we have a very famous statue. You may have seen this one before, the Nike, the Victory, goddess of victory, or winged victory, you may say. She's been called. She's probably not very famous in her time, much more famous afterwards because of her wonderful campaign by the Louvre, the famous art museum in France, marketing her. And again, we have another famous one with the Venus de Milo. Famous for being famous, as you may say. But she is a lovely example as well. Not to shortchange her. All right, but none of the sculptors of the time were as famous as Phidias. Here he is, he has his statue. We don't know if it's Zeus or Poseidon, but this wonderful bronze. He could be holding a lightning bolt, or he could be holding a trident. We don't quite sure. But wonderful, wonderful detail in his beard and his hair. And then we have another bronze. But he is most famous for his very larger-than-life statues. This one is of Athena. This was in the Parthenon. She would have been in the Parthenon. It's debated whether the Parthenon was a temple of sorts. It was kind of a temple and also a treasury. It was meant to house all the gold that was brought back and spoils of war and so forth. And so even Athena herself, in her splendor, she was gilded with gold and ivory. She's wooden underneath. And it was almost like a holding place for all the gold to be. You just put it on her. And you have here a Roman copy later of what she looked like, so we know kind of how to reconstruct her. And if you want to go to Tennessee, there is a full replica of the Parthenon, including Athena and her gilded self there as well. Now, there was probably a statue, although it's not absolutely confirmed, but probably a statue of Athena outside of the Parthenon. You can see the Parthenon there in the background where the other statue would have been. And you can see her, she is quite large, much larger than the one that is indoors. So she probably would not have been gilded all the way down or anything like that. She was still, though, powerful out here. Here you see her with her spear inside in a much more passive state. So he was also famous for his statue of Zeus in the Temple of Zeus at Olympia. And this was done in a similar time period. He worked on both projects. And so he even in his life was put in jail for the possibility of he may have stolen some of the gold. They argued he stole some of the gold off of the Athena statue in order to make the Zeus statue and so forth. And so he actually died in jail, just debating all of this. Poor guy. But just massive, massive statue. Here's a replica as well of what he may have looked like, since it's St. Petersburg now. But it's amazing to think about how these, if they were still here, if we could see them, or even see a photograph of them, it would be amazing. Okay, he also worked on the sculptures, and these are from the Parthenon, either directly or under his supervision. These were carved. These would have been up in the top and the pediments on the outside of the Parthenon. And then on the friezes as well, on some of the exterior, but sort of set back. And there's some reconstructions. You can see the frieze on the sort of the inner outside portion of it, and then the pediment on the top of the outside in the front. Amazing. We'll talk more about the Parthenon tomorrow, but that is the last few seconds, I should say, of the previous video. Hope you enjoyed the Greeks, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Discussion is here for y'all as well. Let me pause.